KTM 390 Duke and the KTM 390 Adventure now come with 350cc engine variants to avoid the 40% GST on bikes above 350cc. So now these only attract a 18% GST and they have become more affordable. We've spent around 2 days riding these motorcycles and we are here to tell you how the new engine performs in the real world. The 399cc Duke will still be sold alongside this new 350cc model and it is called the 390 Duke R. Visually, not much has changed with the new model. The easiest way to identify the new 350cc Duke from the original model is a black frame replacing the orange unit seen on the 390 Duke R. The 390 Adventure on the other hand is now the most affordable bike in the KTM Adventure lineup. Sitting above it is the 390 Adventure X with a 19 17-inch alloy wheel setup, followed by the R that gets a 21 18-inch spoked wheel setup, long travel suspension and tube tires. And finally, the S is the top spec variant with a 21 17-inch tubeless spoked wheel setup. The X, R and S variants continue with the previous 399cc engine for now. It gets a slightly revised color scheme where the rear panels are finished in orange instead of black seen on the Adventure X. Apart from that, the styling is unchanged and it gets the same 19 17-inch alloy wheel setup like the 390 Adventure X. The easiest way to identify the 350cc model on the road is by spotting the Adventure S color schemes paired with the alloy wheel setup. Just like the Triumphs were downsized, the KTMs get the same treatment. So the stroke has been reduced from 64mm to 56.15mm and the bore remains the same. The 399cc engine used to make 46 horsepower at 8,500 rpm and 39 Nm of peak torque at 6,500 rpm. This 350cc engine in comparison makes 41.5 horsepower at 8,600 rpm and 33.5 Nm of peak torque at 7,000 rpm. Now that marks a drop of 4.5 horsepower and 5.5 Nm of torque. If you recall the earlier 390s, they used to have their surge in power at around 5,500 rpm. In these models, the power delivery is more linear and you feel that surge in power coming all the way at 8,000 rpm. And that means you have to basically work the bikes a little more to extract the performance. The KTMs were never known for being smooth or refined and that has pretty much remained the same. Now in fact on these 350cc models, it feels like they're slightly buzzier at certain points in the rev range. When the bike goes to 8,000 rpm, there are a lot of vibrations and they start at around 3,000 rpm on the handlebars, the foot pegs and a few are felt on the tank area as well. On the Duke, the changes have made the bike feel less intimidating and easier to control, but also less exciting than before. As for the Adventure, this calmer nature of the engine suits it reasonably well. It feels less aggressive and easier to ride over long distances. In 6th gear at 100 km/h, the bike sits at around 6,000 rpm. However, the downside is that you do have to rev it harder for quick overtakes or spirited riding. For road riding, this is not too problematic, but if you are an avid off-roader, you will notice the weaker bottom end and mid-range. This was already a problem on the 390 Adventure and it has become more pronounced here. Another thing we did notice during testing is that once the engine temperature was high, the Adventure kept stalling at low RPMs in first gear. In our performance test, this 350cc engine took around 6.2 seconds in the sprint from 0 to 100 km/h. That makes it around 1 second slower than the older model which had done it in around 5.2 seconds. Now this is not a slow bike at all, but it has lost that hooligan edge that the KTM 390 was famous for. In comparison, the Adventure took 6.82 seconds in the sprint from 0 to 100 km/h. And that is again 1 second slower than the Adventure S which we had tested last year. Now again, that should not bother touring riders too much because they are not really there for outright speed, but they will have to live with the buzzy nature of the bike. When it comes to mileage, both the bikes gave us around 23 km/l in the city and out on the highway, this gave us 27 km/l and the Adventure gave us 29 km/l. Now do keep in mind that these figures were achieved with normal riding. If you are going to ride harder and push these bikes, they are going to give you even lower figures. Apart from the engines, everything remains the same as before. The bikes get the same TFT screens and electronic rider aids like a quick shifter, cruise control and traction control. Overall, it is nice to see that all of the features have been retained at the more affordable price point that the bikes are being offered at. And now coming to the main reason that this downsizing was done, to make these bikes more affordable than the 390s. So both these models are now around 60,000 rupees cheaper than the 390 models. And for a majority of customers, the performance sacrifice from this 350cc engines will be worth the cost savings. The way I see it, most of the Duke 390 customers were young enthusiasts straight out of college. And what was actually tougher than getting the funds together was convincing your parents to buy you this machine knowing the reputation that it has. That is surely going to be easier now as the bike feels safer, more controlled, and something that you won't keep getting into trouble as easily as before. It is also a solid upgrade for anyone coming from a smaller capacity motorcycle, and it will still be a fast and entertaining motorcycle for that crowd. That said, it has lost some of the spice and drama that made a 390, especially in the mid-range. On the other hand, this 350 Adventure seems like a good bike for touring, but it is not going to be the most exciting bike on the street or even that capable off-road. And finally, one thing that I want to say is I was actually an owner of a first gen 390 a long time ago, and it was a very exciting machine. So it really disappoints me to see that these are still called the 390s and not the 350s. I mean, I can even accept the Adventure with that name, but the 390 Duke was a legendary and iconic name that should have been reserved only for the true hooligan.